You're listening to the Mechanic.com.au podcast, Australia's #1 podcast for automotive service and repair professionals. This week's podcast is proudly brought to you by SuperPro, engineered to outperform. I'm your host, Jason O, and today we're joined by David Atherton, from National Sales Manager from SuperPro. Mate, good to have you here.
Good to be here, mate. Thanks for having me.
Now tell us a little bit about you. Tell us the story behind David and SuperPro. What brought you to the industry?
I've been in the industry my whole life. I like to think that I'm bilingual. I speak English and mechanic.
Yeah.
My old man used to fix cars for a living. I spent most of my school holidays and days after schools in workshops. So it was a natural progression for me. And it just developed. I fixed cars for a living, and then I got into selling car parts, and It's just progressed. And a few years ago, there was an opportunity to move to Brisbane and work for the market-leading company in the polyurethane space. And I'm not stupid. I said yes.
Oh, outstanding. And have you got any cars yourself? Anything you're working, any projects you're working on yourself?
Well, I like to tell people that I'm not a car guy.
Yeah.
But someone pointed out the other day that when you get over 5 cars, there's sort of there's no denying it.
I think it's hoarder status. Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. So I do have a few cars. I like to say I've got the full suite at the minute.
Wow.
I've got a Turbo Focus, a XR6, and I have a MY19 Mustang.
Oh, fantastic! Excellent. Well, a good broad gamut of vehicles, and
every time I want to feel like a man, I've got a 76 V8 F100 out the back that I just go out and kick a tire and pretend I'm tough.
Now you're speaking my currency. Well, look, to the listeners, wherever you may be, thanks for joining the show. Now, today's topic is SuperPro isn't just about repair. They specialise in tough 4x4 suspension also. So, mate, let's bounce straight into it. David, tell us a bit about SuperPro and what they do.
Okay, well, SuperPro was started by a gentleman called Graham Scudamore Smith back in the 80s. Graham owns Fulcrum Suspension, and SuperPro is a sub-brand of Fulcrum Suspension. And Graham started SuperPro because he needed a solution for people's cars. If you ask Graham what he does for a living, he'll tell you he's a wheel alignment mechanic. And it's all about making cars better and making sure they drive straight and drive true. And he couldn't come up with a solution. There wasn't anything in the market to help him fix cars and align them correctly. So he started making polyurethane bushes, and we've been doing it for 30 odd years now. We're clearly the market leader in Australia and New Zealand, and arguably the world. I don't think there's many companies that come close to the amount of usage of poly that we do.
Well, he's cutting his teeth in a period of time where people weren't doing that in this industry and in this type of spare part. And, when we find ourselves now in 2019, retrospectively, you look back on the experience he's brought along with the brand, that's really defined you as the market leader.
Interns. We bring interns in because, one of the things we want to do is make sure that manufacturing and automotive manufacturing in Australia is healthy. And to do that, you need the right skill set. So we bring interns in through the business. Obviously, they get paid, but they work around their studies, which is great. Also in this building, we have marketing, but then about 5 kilometres away from here, we have our factory. We had to move it away because it wouldn't fit anymore. That's about 5 Ks from here.
That's a good indicator you're doing the right thing, doesn't it? When your manufacturing gets bigger.
Yeah, a bigger building, and we're outgrowing that one too. So I'm trying to talk Graham into buying the building behind, but we've got 160, maybe 170 people working our factory day in, day out. And we have our sway bar factory there as well, where we have a mandrel bender and we bend bars. But the polyurethane bushes, they're all poured here in Queensland.
Wow.
We are an Australian manufacturer. We pay Australian men and women Australian dollars day in, day out to make an Australian product that's been designed, tested in some of the harshest conditions in the world, in Oz.
It does. It validates the property and it validates the brand perfectly. I mean, Australia doesn't get any tougher than that. Now, speaking about tough, you guys have got a pretty extensive product range. Give us a bit of an idea of the sort of vehicles that you cover, the different genres.
Well, it was actually interesting. I was in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago for a trade show, and I had an old Italian gentleman come up to me, and he had a bit of swagger about him, which it made me laugh. And he walks up and he goes, "I'm going to test you." Please do. And he goes, "I need low control arm bushes for a Fiat 124." And I went,
okay,
here we go. We've got them.
yeah, wow,
We've got them. And our product range is one of our strengths. We've got about 7,500 different part numbers in our range that fit 175,000 different holes on vehicles.
Wow.
Out of that, about 1,300 are European specific SKUs that fit 21,000 different holes.
Yeah.
So our product coverage is awesome. No one in the industry comes close, and it's always developing, and it's always expanding. One of the things about polyurethane bushes is there's only a finite diameters that those bushes can be. So part of our R&D process is seeing what we've got in our existing range that fit new vehicles. And
yes,
an interesting one for that recently was a lower control arm bush that was falling out of our top 2,000 sellers. And through our R&D process, we found out it fits a Kia.
Wow.
And because it fits a Kia, it fits Hyundai as well, because they use the same arms.
One and the same. Yeah.
And so now that's gone whoosh back up into our top 100. So we're always doing that stuff. We're always looking to how we can expand the range and how we can get our existing products into cars. But at the same time, we do a lot of halo type stuff. We've just had a Stinger in here, and we've done front and rear bars on a Stinger, and caster and camber bushes for a Stinger, and next week we're going to have an RS in here and do a full build up on an RS. So we're always looking for new stuff.
But it's funny because the passenger bread and butter vehicles are probably the most important ones to keep those vehicles on the road, and people who are price orientated are wanting to repair their vehicles, and that's not normally a phrase associated to modern vehicles. They tend to be more disposable, but bushes and creaks and suspension noises are probably one of the worst things you can get in a modern car because you hear everything.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, let's go on. SuperPro have one of the largest suspension repair ranges, but you also specialise in aftermarket upgrades. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because cars are aspirational. And the second largest investment most people will ever make is a motor vehicle. So
yes.
People want to personalise it. These days it's four-wheel drives. Raising is the new lowering. 5 years ago you'd buy a Falcon and drop it 2 inches. Now you buy a Ranger and you lift it 2 inches. So
correct.
It's that aspirational purchase. It's the want versus the need. Guys bring in their Ranger because they want to spend some money on it. They want it to be better. They bring in their Camry because they've got no bloody choice.
Of course.
So you need to make sure that you've got the products positioned for those people that they want a toy. They want something to go play with.
Well, speaking of that, I'm an old car guy. I've got a Chrysler and a Jeep sitting at home, but a majority of the people I talk to, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've got a Hilux at home, or I've got a Navara at home." And when you talk to them and dig down on it, the reality of it is Australia's fast becoming four-wheel drive crazy, which probably leads to my next question. When and why would you need, say for argument's sake, an aftermarket four-wheel drive control arm? When would you bridge that gap?
Well, the issue you get when you raise a vehicle is the wheel alignment, and people unfortunately ignore wheel alignment. Tires are very expensive. Wheel alignments aren't that expensive, but rule of thumb, four-wheel drive twin cab ute comes out the factory with 2 degrees of caster adjustment on it.
Right.
That's it. And every inch you lift the vehicle, you decrease that caster adjustment by 1 degree. So you put the rule of thumb's a 2-inch lift. So you put a 2-inch lift on your Hilux, you've got no caster left. You've got no adjustment left. Yeah, right. Okay, so that's where the aftermarket arm comes into play. It gives you the increased caster adjustment. Absolutely. So we've got a range of upper control arms for Hilux.
And this is all straight bolt in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a sliding ball joint. Now, it comes out of the factory preset in the maximum position for camber and caster adjustment, but you have the ability to slide that ball joint in and out for clearance issues, because if you've got a bit of a lift and you've got big mudders, the tire can foul on the back of the guard. So we have that sliding ball joint. And look, the reality is a set of upper control arms and a wheel alignment is cheaper than the tires. Yeah, well, I mean, you'll have people in workshops who are listening to the podcast right now who are probably pulling their hair out with somebody who keeps coming back saying, I'm chewing tyres out. And the reality is they need the caster adjustment and it hasn't been picked up. Yep,
So
absolutely.
it sounds like you're offering a solution to an issue that seems to be happening more and more at the coalface.
Yeah, absolutely. And the arms that we make are really rugged arms. They're all made here in Australia. It's an incredibly high grade steel, which you can't even obtain in Asia, even if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
right.
They're all pressed locally. They're all put together locally. We put our bushes in them, and it's a great solution.
Excellent. Well, that leads me probably to the next question. We talked about control arms. Let's talk about sway bars and four-wheel drives. Let's say you've got a dual cab ute where the the OEM manufacturer doesn't supply one of stock. What's the benefit for putting a sway bar on something like that?
Yeah, look, I've got to say the single biggest bang for your buck suspension upgrade you can do on a twin cab ute is a rear sway bar. Like before you do anything else to your ute, before you lift it, before you put greasable shackles on it, before you do your control arms, before you do anything, you should do a rear sway bar. It
Okay.
makes the car, it transforms the car. Like I've been accused once or twice of being a Ford guy, and I am, and I am, and when I was shopping around for my last car, my brother lives out north of Gawler. He's got
Yes.
a farm, and I drove his Ranger. And after driving his Ranger, I made the decision not to buy one
Okay.
because it just doesn't handle great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I put a half a ton in the back, it handles great, but it just doesn't handle great.
Well, if it's set up correctly, it doesn't have to be agricultural. You
Yeah,
can
that's right.
change it, the driving characteristics.
That's right. And let's face it, most of those twin cab utes, most of the Rangers spend 80% of their time going to and from the shops or to and from work or those sorts of things. And when you drive as much as I do, I want a car that handles like a car, not necessarily is truck like on the
Yeah.
bitumen. Now we put a rear bar in the company's Ranger. If I'd driven that one first, I would have bought one.
You would have bought one. Yeah. Yeah.
Completely transforms the car. It's just the change is unbelievable.
Night and day. Well, about the emotion of that, same as if we talk at poly bushes, and, they're not just in daily driving situations, but also the half off-road conditions. Can you explain maybe why your polyurethane products would perform better than, say, a rubber bush?
Yeah, sure. So one of the main benefits of poly is the durability. It doesn't melt with a little bit of oil leaked onto it. It
Yes.
doesn't have the same. It just works completely different. A polyurethane bush works like a bearing, whereas rubber works like a torsional pivot. So the rubber loads up all the energy and then releases it, where the polyurethane, it just pivots across the steel like a bearing. So it has completely different characteristics. It's not going to deteriorate as quick. Our stuff comes with a lifetime guarantee, so it's not going to deteriorate, pretty much ever, right?
That seems to be the biggest issue, is people will sort of say the bushes, deteriorated. What do I do? Do I replace standard or do I go poly bush?
Yeah. Well, see, back in the day, people just used to make poly in 1 duro. Now, duro is a measure of firmness. Okay. And as a rule of thumb, a rubber bush will be 60 duro. Now,
Yep.
we make polyurethane in multiple duros from 70 up to 90, 95. And once again, it's about application engineering. It's about making sure you put the right duro in the right
Okay.
location.
So you can have a soft duro urethane.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, customers can't decide what they want. We decide that for them,
Yes.
because that's what we're here for. But that's Nick and the boys outside in the workshop. They'll get a bush out. We'll try it one way. We'll try it another way. We'll keep on going until we reduce noise vibration to nothing or as minimal as we can.
Yeah.
You wouldn't put a 95 poly in a lower control arm on a Trana because you'd need a kidney belt. You'd use a 70. So, it doesn't matter if it gets an oil leak or something happens, it's not going to melt away,
Yes.
but it's still going to be comfortable. So it's about, a bit of science, knowing exactly what's supposed to fit in what hole. And
Good.
a lot of what we do these days is we do hybrid bushes. So we'll do dual duros. Like we just did a subframe bush for a CX5.
Right.
And that's different.
Very
duros.
popular car.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got a problem with the subframe. And so we use different duros on different sides of the bushes. So one takes the MVH out at low speed, and then at high speed, the other side firms it up.
Well, I remember a classic story about a historic vehicle from decades gone by, the mighty Mazda RX-2, or the Compella, with the four-link rear end. And the rule of thumb was you could only have, the polyurethane at one end of the control arm, not both. Which you'd literally tear the car in half at the back end. And it sounds like with the Mazda, the CX, that it still rings true today. You've got to be really in tune with what's going on, but that seems to be what you guys are offering. You offer that advice and guidance too.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, it's our head engineer has been working with Poly for a very long time. Our head mechanic, Nick, has been fixing cars for 30 odd years, and all in suspension. So these guys have a lot of knowledge, and they drive the car, they test the car, they try different products, and they just refine it and refine it and refine it until we make the car better, which is what SuperPro is all about, making cars.
Where can we get it from? Where can we get SuperPro? If the people listening wanted to go and have a look at the product and touch it and feel it, where can they get it from?
Look, it's readily available. We are the largest manufacturer of polyurethane in Australia by a long way. The easiest thing is to go to our website, superpro.com.au, go to our dealer locator, plug in your postcode, and it'll bring up the local distributor.
Do exactly where it is. Well, look, thanks very much for coming on the show and chatting with us today, David. And if our listeners have any follow-up questions of anything they can go ahead and reach out to SuperPro via the Mechanic.com.au community. And now, if you're not already a member of Mechanic.com.au, join the thousands of other mechanics around Australia who are earning more, learning more, networking more at Mechanic.com.au, the home of Australia's mechanics, by creating a free account online. Have you enjoyed it today, mate? Have you enjoyed getting through everything?
Hey, it was a great chat. I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, look, thanks for tuning into Mechanic.com.au podcast, Australia's #1 podcast for automotive service and repair professionals. If you want to unlock a whole host of trade resources, including our private community, competitions, education content, job opportunities, training, troubleshooting, and much, much more, go ahead and create a free account now at Mechanic.com.au. Thanks for listening. Keep the suspension flexing, and we'll see you for the next podcast coming very soon.